future is to understand the past. So help us to that end, we ask in Jesus' name. Amen. Okay, so we're answering or attempting to answer the question. Let me pull it up. Of how the good woman of Revelation 12, does it turn into the good woman of Revelation 17? Yes, so the question is, who is the good woman of Revelation 17? Where did she come from? So Revelation 12 is the story of the church. We mark the beginning of the Christian church with the birth of Christ in 4 BC. That church is going to go through a number of experiences. One church, but different dispensations. So beginning with Ephesus, we followed the experience of the church until we get to the history of the 1260. Thyatira is a good church, but it's in captivity to Babylon. It's susceptible to the teachings and seductions of Jezebel. But this wilderness is a long period. Well over 1,000 years of history. And towards the end of that history, there are 2 movements. That will have a profound effect on this church in the wilderness. One is the Protestant Reformation, where there is a breakaway from Jezebel's teachings. To a certain degree. But the idea is that you can stand up to the hierarchy. You can have a voice and protest. The other movement is called the Enlightenment. The Age of Enlightenment. The central doctrines were individual liberty, representative government, the rule of law, and religious freedom. These were when people, men and women, came together to think more rationally about the world around them. They were breaking away from the superstitions that Jezebel had shackled the people to. So these Enlightenment teachings would lead to the French Revolution. So the church is experiencing these movements. If we go to Revelation 12, the serpent or the dragon is going to create a flood. It's going to put this woman in great danger. And we've talked about that flood in the past as the Counter-Reformation. And this would have totally destroyed God's church, brought it to an end. But what does Revelation 12 tell us? Is that the earth is going to help the woman. And what is this earth?
The New World, the United
The
States.
New World. The Americas. There is a way of escape. The people need to escape the tyranny of church and the tyranny of state. But now we would say the tyranny of the bad woman and the tyranny of the beast. And so the church is going to come to the United States. And the Pilgrims are going to eventually create a government that is in opposition to what they've seen in the old world. And the Pilgrims are also going to eventually create churches that are in opposition to what was in the old world. So the earth will not let that flood of opposition into the new world. And so we are going to see pilgrims create a good government, and pilgrims create a good church. What's the name of this good church? Anybody want to guess at a name? I know I'm oversimplifying quite a big span of history.
Is it Philadelphia?
Yes. So the good church is Philadelphia. There'll be another church called Sardis. These two churches will be contemporary. We know that the dragon from the 1260 is still angry with the woman. Even though the woman has escaped into the new world. So it's going to attempt to make war with it. And so there are two entities that are mentioned there in Revelation 12, 17. The dragon will make war with the woman and with what else?
The
With the
remnant
remnant
of
of
the
the
seed.
seed.
So Revelation 12 is the experience of God's church. But the experience that church goes through for 1260 years in hiding will create people that go to the United States that will make good government based on how they've accepted protest and enlightenment. But will also produce the remnant of her seed. These are the Millerites. How did the Millerites come to their understanding of prophecy? By reading Enlightenment thinkers and scholars like Edward Gibbons. A lot of their knowledge of history and understanding of the papacy in particular came from Enlightenment thinkers. Came from the experience that the church had during the 12th. While the 1260 is known as the Dark Ages, we know that there is light in the darkness. That light created movements that could create good government in a new world. And church movements who understood present truth. So we can see that the good woman of Revelation 17 does have a connection to the good church of Revelation 12. But it's not a church. It is something that is created out of the experience of the 1260. Pilgrims created good government, pilgrims created good church. And pilgrims created not so good churches, which is Sardis. So we've marked this as 1798. And so this is the Sixth Kingdom. And so we have a good woman, no beast, because they'd learnt about what they'd learnt about what a bad woman and a beast does together during the 1260. So any thoughts? So when we say the earth helped the woman, that's why it's important to understand that the earth represents geography. A new world with no corrupt government, no corrupt church. So that could start fresh. Take what was learnt during the 1260 and make a better life for themselves in the new world. It's not the same good woman, it's not a church. But it was born out of that woman's experience. I guess that's the best way I can explain it. So it's not God's church. But it's hard to differentiate between the two. It didn't come out of nothing. It was born of the church in the wilderness. And others will come along and explain it better. If you can get the gist of that, and let's see how it develops. Anybody? Yes? Oh, question without notice, that's scary. So Revelation 14, 9 to 10 is the third angel's message. The warning against worshipping the beast and receiving its image. Oh, so we've received another question. And you've repeated the question in Shona? Yeah. So how do we connect Revelation 14, 9 to 10 with the seventh kingdom? I guess we are living in the time period where we are in danger of receiving the mark of the beast. So the warning is there of what of go on, sorry. Of the consequences of receiving the mark. But we're also given the solution. So so Revelation 13 we always ask the question, where is John? John's standing on the beach. Okay, so let me make a bit more room, sorry. Here's John. He's on the beach. Over here's the sea. And over here's the land. We can place that 1798. Time of the end. And then the chapter will continue explaining the beast that was in the sea. What its features were like. How it got wounded to death. How people are going to worship it. and think that it's invincible. It's going to speak blasphemy for 42 months. So we've got 538 to 1798. And then, and we know that it makes war with the saints during this time period. So if we go to verses 9 and 10, if any person has an ear, let them hear. So listen carefully if you can. He that leadeth into captivity shall go into captivity. So who led people into captivity? The sea beast. So it led people into captivity for 42 months. It goes into captivity in 1798. He that killeth with the sword must be killed with the sword. So it killed with the sword for 42 months. Now it's being killed with the sword. So this verse is marking 1798. And in 1798, there's John standing on the beach. And what characteristics does John have?
Two different beasts.
So I'm looking at Revelation 13:10. And right here in 1798, the deadly word is being explained. But in 1798, there's John, and John is a saint. What characteristics does this saintly John have?
Faith and patience.
Patience and faith. So let's go down to Revelation 14:9 to 10. And we've got the third angel's message. And I would suggest that the third angel's message actually is 9 to 12. So when do we mark the arrival of the third angel?
At 1844.
All right, let's go 1844. And And so there's a beast. There's a warning not to worship it or receive its image, mark. And let's compare Revelation 13:10 with Revelation 14:12. What kind of saints do we have in 1844 when the third angel arrives?
Saints who have faith and patience. And keep the commandments.
So in 1798, we see one beast go down, and one beast rise. This beast that we're warned about in Revelation 14 must be the resurrected fifth beast. So we're looking at the seventh kingdom. Whether it's 1844 or our history, there's a beast that can kill you. Whether it does it in your forehead or your hand. But we see a difference in the condition of the saints. The saints, at the time of the end, they have patience and they have faith. What's patience connected with? Patience.
Tarrying.
You must have an understanding of what?
Is it time?
Time. And what's faith? When we talk about, when Revelation 12 and talks about faith. Faith of Jesus.
I think of the past experiences.
Yeah, they understand the past. When you understand the past, what are you going to else understand? What is the understanding of the past necessary for?
Understand the prophecies.
God's people understand time. They understand where they are in history. They understand the prophecies. But what don't they lack? What don't they have?
Commandments.
they're lacking an understanding of God's character. There is an experience in this movement of God's people between 1798 and 1844. If you had have asked William Miller, and I mean, I know he only received his in concordance in 1798, but if you had asked him in that time period, are you a commandment keeper? Those good Philadelphians, what would they have said? Oh, I go to church every Sunday. I'm a good commandment keeper. In 1844, what message comes to the Millerite movement? Joseph Bates is going to bring Sabbath understanding to the movement. It's going to take a few years for people to accept it. But there is a progression in the church. So if we change the dates and we put 1989, and just for argument's sake, let's put Sunday law. For the third angel. We know that during this history, there has to become an increasing awareness of the commandments. So back in this history, the 1844 history, it was Sabbath. What are we going to say in our history? Equality? Or the golden rule? We didn't have it at the time of the end. We had patience, we had faith. We knew where we were in history, that we were the last movement. First angel had arrived. We were the movement that would see the second advent. We had the spirit of prophecy. But we weren't commandment keepers, even though we were keeping the Sabbath. Commandment keeping was what was lacking and had to be opened up to us over time. It became more clear through the midnight cry message. So if this is the experience of the saints, what do we have to be concerned about when it comes to the mark of the beast? given that that beast is the seventh kingdom, what is it trying to do away with? These are the beasts that tread down God's people. But they tread down everybody. So all we need to do is compare and contrast. If this is here, and here is where the third angel arrives, then we know that in contrasting that with a beast, that the beast is going to be pushing a message in opposition to the saints. So the danger for us to receive the mark is to reject the golden rule. This movement has all three: faith, patience, and commandments. And we compare that to contrast that with the beast. It has no patience. It is unrestrained. It has no concept of time. It thinks it's immortal. And it treads down other human beings. So it's just a compare and contrast between the saints and the seventh kingdom. Any questions? Did that answer the question, or is the questioner satisfied, or is there something I missed? So I could draw this better. This is the experience of the saints. And that is the experience of the beast. Whoops. Such a scribbler. Again, the saints. And the beast. All right. So have we got much time left? Five minutes? Is there any other questions? Or just maybe some closing thoughts? That's all right. Okay, all right. I did receive other questions privately. And I owe those people an email, which I must get to, so apologies. And it is on, I'd like to just go back to Daniel chapter 8. And if we consider Daniel chapter 8 and our definitions of the woman and the beast. So the woman, and I know I can hear you all saying it, an entity with an ideology. And the beast, institution with power that promotes the ideology of the woman. So I'd just like us to consider Daniel chapter 8. And his own vision, the vision of the rise and fall of kingdoms. Our first kingdom is a ram. Remember, it's got those two horns, one higher than the other. Medo-Persia. So this horn, it pushes in certain geographical areas. It conquers other kingdoms. Is it good or bad? If you look at verses 3 and 4, can you tell me if it was a good or bad kingdom?
I think it was a bad kingdom.
Okay. And what in these verses would indicate that?
Because the ram had got different, like the horns were not of the same size. We know that. So this has got a defect in that the horns are not the same.
So if two countries join together and one's smaller than the other, but they make a union, is that a bad thing if they're not equal?
I think it was a good kingdom.
Sorry, what was that answer?
I think it was a good kingdom.
So what in these verses indicates whether it's good or it's bad? What? Go on, sorry.
Yeah,
So
I
I'm
think it was a
suggesting the fact that the Medes weren't as big as the Persians isn't what makes it, it wouldn't necessarily make it bad. That an alliance doesn't have to be between two equals. I'm taller than my husband. Does that make it a bad marriage?
No.
What did you say? Sorry, say again.
I said no.
Oh, okay, no, yeah, thank you. So is there anything else that would indicate whether it was good or bad?
Hello, Elder Terry. Can I try? I think it was a bad kingdom in that no one could deliver from his hand, and he was doing according to his will.
Keep going.
And became great.
Became great. Did according to its own will and became great. What's the translation of that? What's the word in the Aramaic?
Gadol.
Yes. So just the fact that it pushed, that it warred, that doesn't mean that it was bad from the beginning. It could be a good kingdom in verse 3, but we know in verse 4 it's become bad. In order to exalt yourself, it means you've got to tread something else down. So then Medes and Persians must have a bad woman and a bad, go on. Okay. So let's go to the next is a he-goat. Have a look at the he-goat and tell me the words, the verse and the words to tell me whether it's good or bad.
Hello, Elder Terry.
I'm
Hello,
thinking
you've
of
got a
this.
verse for me? Hello, did I freeze? Oh, somebody got a verse and some words about the he-goat?
Verse 7, Elder Terry, Daniel 8, verse 7.
Lovely. Oh, okay. So I'm looking also at verse 8. What does the goat do?
He waxed
What?
very great.
That's more self-exaltation than what the Medes and Persians had. So it's not bad in verse 5 or verse 6. It's not even necessary. But yes, I would say 7 and 8. Because in 8 it says, therefore, because it had broke the 2 horns, that's why it waxed very great. Therefore, there must be a bad woman controlling a beast. But you cannot distinguish between the two in these. We know they're there, but there's no, you can't separate them. And then in verse 9, out of one of the 4 winds comes a little horn. This little horn is masculine. It's pagan Rome. In verse 9, as we see pagan Rome arrive on the world's history, is it good or bad?
It is bad.
Exceeding great. So we know we've got a bad woman and a beast, but you can't distinguish between the two. Verse 10. Who are we talking about in verse 10?
The little horn.
Little horn, which one?
The papacy.
The papacy. Because it says it, which translates to she. It's a feminine pronoun. Okay, what does it do in verse 10?
It waxed great towards the host of heaven.
That word waxed is even bigger than exceeding great. It's like a candle that is completely waxed over. And you can see that it is stamping down the host of heaven. So this is verse, all right, Papal Rome. we've looked at verse 9. We can't distinguish in verse 10 between a bad woman and a beast. It doesn't tell us how it's stamping on the host and the stars. But we get to see this history repeated. So we go to verse 11, which is pagan Rome. Good or bad? What's the word? Magnified. Again, this is Gadal. This is talking about how pagan Rome killed the Christ. And pagan Rome took away paganism. And trod down, was replacing its own religion with a different one. Again, a bad woman and a bad beast, but you can't differentiate. So let's go to verse 12. We're back to papal Rome. And it tells us that an army was given it. So the papacy, that hymn there is supplied. And the papacy is given an army. And it's this army that's given it that allows it to practice and prosper by treading down by casting the truth to the ground. So here in Daniel 8, we're going to see that the fifth kingdom, or the little horn feminine, we can differentiate between the bad woman and the beast. We can see that even more when we go to Daniel 11, verse 30 and 31. This history will be repeated. You cannot distinguish between the woman and the beast in the previous kingdoms. This is kingdom number 5. In the language of Revelation 17. In the previous 4 kingdoms, the woman and the beast are as a whole. That's why it's important to understand the dynamics of this 5th kingdom. The dynamics of the little horn feminine. because that is what is going to be resurrected in the seventh kingdom. When we go to the symbol quintus, what does quintus mean? It symbolizes 5 and 7. The 5th month in the Julian calendar and the 7th month in the Gregorian calendar. It points us to the time when the 7th kingdom is, when the 5th kingdom gets resurrected into the 7th. We see that on July 18, 2024. When you see this Gadal exhibited by an entity with an ideology, that's finally going to find a beast to ride. An institution with power. And the resurrection of the 5th is completed at that time. So quintus is a symbol that points us to not only July 2024, but also to Revelation 17. So any thoughts or questions?
Hello.
Yes?
Sorry, I just wanted to take you back a bit so that you just clarify where we see the pronouns on verse 9 and 10.
So in verse 9, a little horn, that is in the masculine. Whenever you see the word he or him, that's masculine. So he or him isn't used in verse 9. But a little horn is in the masculine, is gendered. And gendered male. But what Daniel does, it's very odd. Because in verse 10, Daniel doesn't say he. Daniel says it, which would be more correctly translated as she. Daniel has changed gender. So you've got Daniel 9, pagan Rome, Daniel 10, papal Rome. In verse 11, we'll go back to he, masculine. Pagan Rome. And verse 12, that him is in italics. It's not masculine. This is she, this is papacy. So let me write it out. 9 pagan, 10 papal, 11 pagan, 12 papal. This is called oscillating tenses. What Daniel does is gives us one history, goes back and repeats it with a second history. He also does that in Daniel chapter 11. Gives you a block of history, stops, go backs, and gives you a second block of history that overlaps. So that's, I guess, it's just old Adventist theology. This is nothing new. But it is something thought about within Adventism. Because there are those that wanted to make the daily Christ's heavenly ministry, heavenly sanctuary ministry. In which case, you've got to do away with this understanding. But our heritage is Millerite Adventism. And they understood what the daily was. And so when we see that, when we trace the Gadal through these kingdoms, and how they are, it's only increasing in power. Yeah, tracing that history helps us to see what we're facing in the seventh kingdom. Does that help?
Yeah, it does. So yeah, so I do see the oscillation of the tenses from verse 9 to 12. So is it more like a tool of methodology?
So I believe so. We have Miller's rules, and we have parable teaching. We have line upon line. And these methods have given us great light. But if there's this other tool out there that understands a bit of Bible linguistics, we're not going to chuck it out. You know, we want all the tools that we can have in our little tool bag. I believe that these truths can be taught without understanding, you know, Adventist theology. you know, without understanding the ancient Greek and Hebrew, we can prove these things using parable methodology. But it doesn't hurt to understand the ancient texts. And the light that can come through just, you know, the Seventh-day Adventist Bible commentary still has, you know, it still has some good things in it. It actually, when it comes to the daily, it lays out two different views. In order that we can look at them and determine, well, I like this one, I can't follow that one. But that daily debate, we're way past that. What we're trying to understand is Revelation 17. And so my point in going back to Daniel chapter 8 was to help us to understand Revelation 17. The relationship between the woman and the beast. And how Daniel can show us that when you get to papal Rome, something strikingly different has happened in the ruling kingdom. Because it's that fifth beast that gets resurrected. And I'm sure you understand what I mean by it gets resurrected. Not literally, but same dynamics. So did you want to translate what you said? I think so. I think you can see that in Nebuchadnezzar, where he was both king and high priest. He oversaw the temple and his armies. So yeah, yes. And I think that's why you see the self-exaltation increase. The way we used to teach it was that Nebuchadnezzar considered himself a high priest of the, I don't know, Marduk. He considered himself a high priest. The Medes and Persians created laws of infallibility. Alexander the Great became a demigod. And then the Roman Caesars gradually deified themselves as well. Until you've got the papacy, which is, you know, God's representative on earth. So we see that self-exaltation rise, get stronger. All right then. Well, I best bring it to a close, seeing we're over time. But thank you. Go on. I'll close in prayer. Dear God in heaven, we thank you for all the people that have gone before us. People ranging in all levels of ability. That have brought great light to this movement. The Millerite people, even Seventh-day Adventist Church. We stand on a solid foundation. And yet we still need to sift, to test and to correct messages of the past. Help us to be willing and able to do this. We need to understand our past in order to handle what is coming. I pray for the members of the Alpha and Omega ministry. Bless them and the remaining hours of the Sabbath. I ask this in Jesus' name. Amen.
Thank you, Elder Terry.
Thank you. I'll turn this off and so I can stop share. How do I stop share? Zoom. Sorry, I'll just get out of this somehow. Thank you for inviting me. And we look forward to listening to all the other speakers and Parminder as he continues